Croeso I Mynydd Parys. Welcome to Mynydd Parys. My name's Neil Summers and this is Ron Clays and we're members of Parys Underground Group.
My name is Brian Hope. I was brought up in MacLeod during the war, and this was a place where we all played. Dangerous though it may have been, with open shafts and steep cliffs, but nevertheless we felt it was ours to play here, but we'd all been warned not to, but never mind.
Parys Mountain is a Bronze Age copper mine on the Isle of Anglesey in North Wales. But in a few minutes we'll be going underground to see where some of the Bronze Age miners actually worked.
And I remember going down, and the last rung but one on the first stage going down broke under my weight, and I was a lightweight. So I thought, hey, no more. We're not going to go down any further.
It was about the 80s, wasn't it? A young lad fell down one of the shafts and was killed. So the council decided to block all the shafts off, including this footway, and they poured loads of concrete into shuttering. The shuttering gave way. They didn't know it to give way, and all the concrete come down the steps.
So we've got a ledge and then we've got about a 20-foot drop, so be careful on that. So I'll get to the bottom of this ladder and then I shout clear, and we're at 10 fathoms, and it's called fathoms because when the mine started to go underground they brought a lot of Cornish people in because they were Cornish miners that did the deep mining rather than the surface mining. And the Cornish miners in Cornwall also used fathoms because they used to be mine captains, and therefore they were used to measuring fathoms, which is 6 foot. So we're on the 10 fathom level at the moment, and we'll be going down to the 15, maybe the 35 fathom, depending on how far we go down. You may have seen, we've come across the passageway, and then in this area they would have found a body of ore, and they've worked out this particular area to get the ore out. Not only above us, but also below us, you see there. So they've gone down as well. So when they were working the ore, they would take this ore from the underground, take it to the surface, and then on the surface they had ladies called copper ladies.
Copper laddies, as they say locally. Now these were the ones who used to break up the ore. The ore used to come up in quite large chunks, and they used to break them up. And all the good stuff they throw one side and the lighter stuff away on the other side.
And their job was to break the ore down, to concentrate the ore into pieces that mainly had picenite in it or just the copper. And that was about 2% of what they took out of the surface.
As many as 80 women working there on anvils, hammering away and singing, and or even reciting poetry.
You can see what conditions they were working in here. Little passages, small caverns like this. This is a typical cavern of what the miners would have worked. But we've got nice bright lights, modern lights. The miners of the day were using candles. But imagine working in here just by candlelight. They would have had candle boys holding candles for them. If you were a poor family living in MacLeod, say you were a 12-year-old and you look 15, get up to that mountain, earn some money. The mine company's going to turn a blind eye. All right, maybe after the 1800s, maybe you get towards 1850s, somewhere around there, the laws were being brought in. The kids couldn't work underground. But if you think 1768, you look at any old pictures from about 1768, Victorian time, they had kids working down the coal mines everywhere. They'd have had kids working down here. They're definitely working on the surface from the age of 8.
So we're just in this passageway now. You notice these drill holes. There's one that's running there, there's another one that's running there, and there's another one that's running there. And these are the holes that they will have drilled to actually make this passageway. So the way they do that is that they have a man holding a chisel and a man with a big lump hammer, and holds the chisel, turns the chisel, hits with a hammer. Turn, bang, trying to cut through this rock. Now imagine how hard it is to do that, because we've got modern battery operated tungsten tip drills, and it takes us a long time to drill small holes in this. mine. You imagine how long it takes to drill an inch diameter hole, probably 9 inches, that one, 12 inches. They then put a little bit of black powder in the bottom of the hole. They then refill the hole with straw or mud, and they have a straw fuse, which they then light, goes down the hole, explodes the black powder, and then that exposes a piece of rock that they can come into.
Lots of people got killed with the black powder blasting that they were doing down here. The miners were notorious for putting small fuses in and then light the fuse and then run to a place where they could dive into to actually get away from the blast. But some of them didn't get the timing right. You will notice here we have some unusual rocks, completely alien to the mountain. These are smooth pebbles which we believe have come from either the beach or in a stream. Believe it or not, these are stone hammers from the Bronze Age. So we've got evidence of Bronze Age mining in the mine dating back to 4,000 years ago. So that's 4,000 BP, before present. But how did they know where the copper was? Down in the cavern here we've got big lumps of peat. It could have been possible that they'd been burning peat and the copper oozed out. Or it could be that the copper was just visible on the surface. It amazes me, how did they find the copper in the first place? Was it visible on the surface? Or was it just by chance? They worked their way down. Now, they were working with just these things for breaking up the rock, but how did they manage to make this big hole to start with? And they would do that with a thing called fire setting. So they would build a massive fire up against the rock and just leave it burning away for days on end. They would help it along by quenching it. So they would quench it with water, and that would crack the rock open, or the rock would just shatter up, and then they would break it up into small pieces, take it to the surface, then use the hammer stones to break it up into small pieces to smelt it. It's fabulous that we've got the evidence down here. And Dr. David Jenkins came down here in the 60s with his kids, came across this, took the hammerstone home, used it as a doorstop, and then was attending a seminar on ancient mining techniques, and saw on the table lots of these spread about, and he said, what are these? And the professor that was there said, well, they're hammerstones from the Bronze Age. He said, I know where there's hundreds of them.
Now, the Romans were in Amlwch, but we don't have much evidence on the mountain itself of working that was carried out by the Romans themselves. What these were, I think the work that was done by the Romans probably been damaged or even completely removed by subsequent works. But if there were the miners that were there, the Roman miners, they would have been trained in Spain, and they would have been slaves. Now, the mine is in the ownership of two families. One, the family of the present Marquis of Anglesey, and the other one of the Hugheses of Llystillas, which is a country pile 3 or 4 miles to the south of us. And they were often at war with each other, and a solicitor or a barrister or whatever he was came in and tried to smooth things out between them. But he eventually took control of the mountain, and he became quite a famous entrepreneur who was known as the Copper King. He discovered a way of making money from every aspect of the copper, from mining it to smelting it to manufacturing items, including manacles for slaves. He went on to establish a bank, Williams and Glyn Bank, and he was quite a famous man, quite ruthless, but he nevertheless quite famous.
That's a penny. Parys Mountain logo on one side. It was a coinage of this area. In any case, coinage was very scarce at the time. The thing is, on Parys Mountain, they had the material, so they could make their own coins. So a chap by the name of Thomas Williams, Twm Chwaraeteg, actually he was the manager of both mines, decided to have copper tokens made. Now they were made in certain years. Well, he became the richest man in Wales, actually. He had a soft spot for the Druids, because he lived in Llanhidian, right on the Menai Straits. The Romans actually slaughtered the Druids, so he decided to have a Druid's head put on his coins. But these virtually became, I suppose you could say, proper coinage. It says on the side, payable in Anglesey, London and Liverpool. The only place that they could spend them was within the company. So they'd be using these to buy all their materials, or even the shops that the mine company owned. The discovery here was 1768. So we think they were underground around about the 1780s, maybe a bit sooner. So 1780s right through to the 1900s. Most of them working in the open cast, and then there were some were working underground. But in the latter part of the mining of the open cast, because the open cast would have only been going for about 10-15 years, something like that, before it was exhausted, and then they would start to go underground. So all those people had to work somewhere, so they would either work on the surface or underground. So up to 1,500 people. So it was a big mine. Dominated the world market in its heyday. Cornish mines really suffered because of Parys Mine, so Paul Dark wouldn't have been very happy.
Anglesey being an island, without the British connecting it to the mainland, then the only way they could get the ore out to the smelters, either on Merseyside or in South Wales, the only way they could do it was by sea. And this was the nearest port, if you can call it a port. It's just really an opening between two rocks, really. That's about all it can describe it as. But an Act of 1793 widened the port, and it allowed as many as 23 sailing vessels in at any one time. And they were so congested here at one time, you could walk from one side of the port over the decks of the ships over to the other side. The Copper King, one of the products that he made was copper sheathing, and wooden ships, especially in warm waters, were subject to what is called a teredo worm, which burrowed its way in through the timbers, and it could wreck a ship in no time at all. So what the Copper King decided that he would make copper sheathing plates, and all of the naval ships at the time, including HMS Victory, and when they were refurbishing the Victory some years ago, they were selling off the sheets made of Amlwch copper, which came off. As the trade in ore between Amlwch and South Wales and Merseyside grew, so also there was need to improve the facilities at the port. And there was an Act of 1793 which allowed for that. So before that, all the commerce was on the western side. But now the development, the improvement to the port was carried out on this side. Now the ore was brought in by horse and cart from the mountain down the Copper Road.
Now if you'd come down this mine just over 15 years ago or so, this is about as level as you could have got to, because this is where the level of the water was in the mine. Then we discovered that the water in the mine over the last 100 years had slowly built up to this level, and it was causing an issue because there was an adit, which is a drainage passageway out of the mine, and the adit had blocked. So working with the Environment Agency, it was decided that we try and pump out all the water that's in the mine so that we could see the state of the concrete dam. So over a number of months they pumped the water out from this side of the dam, and were able to eventually get to the dam, destroy the dam, so now any water that runs into the mine naturally goes out through that drainage adit. But as the water slowly went down over the next couple of months, more and more parts of the mine started to become available. So, for example, this shaft, we had no idea that this shaft was actually here. But now we'd be able to get down to the 35 fathom and eventually down to the 45 fathom level, which was fully flooded when we first came into the mine. Coming into the blue crystal chamber, and as you go in you notice the whole of the wall is covered in this blue crystalline material. It's an iron copper sulfate, very much like the copper sulfate you had in school. And what's happened here is that when we first came into the mine, after the dewatering, there was none of this blue crystal on the wall. But as the water has then seeped through the rocks, it's caused this crystal to form on the surface of the rock. And you can see this lovely blue crystalline copper sulfate type material. Now, like copper sulfate in the school, this actually picks up water, something called deliquescent, and it'll pick up the water and slowly turn from this bright blue colour into a whitish green colour. If you come down this mine in another year or two, you won't be able to see this blue colour, so it's lucky that you've come down today to be able to see this.
So in recent times, they've discovered copper in the shaft, in the new shaft up on the north side of the mountain, and they've discovered copper, but not in sufficient quantities or purity to make it a going concern. So that's the situation at the moment. The mountain is idle, but there are other aspects such as gold and silver which might get it working again someday.